Did this show of force by Iran and its allies force President Trump and key Arab partners to abruptly halt their planned strike in a last-minute U-turn, changing the course of events at the 11th hour? Are 31 million Iranians now being portrayed as ready for war? And has live television coverage effectively transformed into a chaotic battlefield that broadcasts mass mobilization in real time? We brought a tank to national TV. Was that stage display intended as a direct, unmistakable message of war to the Gulf states? And how are regional leaders interpreting this dramatic signal? As US allies watched the drama unfold, did the sight of AK-47s, tanks, and battle cries on live television serve as both a warning and a call to action across the region?
The Major General of the Revolutionary Guards, Pilot Ali Abdullahi, added, "They should know that Islamic Iran and its armed forces are more prepared and stronger than in the past. They have their hands on the trigger, and they will respond quickly, decisively, powerfully, and extensively to any renewed aggression by the enemies of the land and the proud nation. The American Zionist enemies have repeatedly tested the brave Iranian nation and its powerful armed forces."
President Trump has said he called off a new attack on Iran at the formal request of Gulf states. But what pressure or persuasion led those partners to ask for that restraint? In a scene that looked ripped from a wartime propaganda film, Iranian state television paraded tanks and assault rifles across the screen, staging an unmistakable display of military power for viewers at home and abroad. Anchors were even seen firing AK-47s on air while military instructors demonstrated combat drills, turning routine broadcasts into overtly militarized programming meant to showcase readiness and intimidate opponents. Shockwaves rippled across social media after an Iranian anchor appeared alongside tanks and Kalashnikovs, with clips and commentary spreading rapidly and fueling alarm among international audiences. Those military-style broadcasts amplified by Iran's embassy sent a clear and alarming message worldwide, sparking fear and prompting intense scrutiny of Tehran's intentions. Fears of a US-Israel strike escalated as many Iranians began to view a resumption of open war as increasingly inevitable, heightening tensions across the region. Notably, President Trump has said he is holding off on a military attack on Iran that had been planned for Tuesday, May 19th, a move that immediately raised questions about what prompted the pause. Serious negotiations are taking place, Trump claimed, saying the attack was put on hold at the request of Gulf nations, suggesting high-level diplomacy may have intervened to avert immediate conflict. Meanwhile, Iran's military command responded with a show of force and a declaration of higher readiness, signaling that Tehran was prepared to escalate if provoked. Iran's armed forces issued that challenge-like statement shortly after Trump paused the planned military action, framing the pause as a temporary reprieve amid continuing threats.
The Major General of the Revolutionary Guards, Pilot Ali Abdullahi, added, "They should know that Islamic Iran and its armed forces are more prepared and stronger than in the past. They have their hands on the trigger, and they will respond quickly, decisively, powerfully, and extensively to any renewed aggression by the enemies of the land and the proud nation. The American Zionist enemies have repeatedly tested the brave Iranian nation and its powerful armed forces. We have proven with greatness and divine will that we will show our authority and ability to the enemies in the field of action. And if another mistake is made by our enemies, we will deal with it with strength and ability far greater than the imposed war of Ramadan, and we will defend the rights of the Iranian nation with all our might and cut off the hand of any aggressor."
Amid a fragile ceasefire with the United States, Tehran is openly training civilians for the possibility that a new phase of conflict could erupt with little warning. On May 16th, Iranian state television broadcast images of civilians receiving defense training inside mosque compounds, presenting these activities as community-based preparation rather than secret camps. The report included men, women, teenagers, and entire families joining the drills, underscoring the message that every age group can contribute in some way to national defense. Footage from Avaz, Kerman, Bihar, Shiraz, and Zahedan showed similar scenes of family-style training, suggesting a coordinated effort across diverse regions rather than a single city experiment. Participants were seen handling light weapons and moving through simple, coordinated group exercises, learning basic skills such as aiming, movement, and communication under supervision. Broadcasters described the sessions as support and defense readiness training, emphasizing that the goal was to prepare volunteers mentally and physically for emergencies or external threats. State media reported that volunteers learned how to safely operate and assemble light firearms, turning what might once have been military-only knowledge into a wider civic capability. The drills were explicitly linked to Iran's Jan Fada Bar Iran mobilization campaign, which portrays participation as an act of devotion and readiness to sacrifice for the homeland. That campaign calls on Iranians to volunteer in response to perceived threats from the US and Israel, framing the posture as defensive resistance rather than an attempt to start a wider war. Iranian outlets have claimed that over 31 million people have registered so far, using the figure to suggest broad social backing for the idea of collective readiness. All of this is happening while Iranian officials continue to warn that hostilities could resume, using these televised drills to signal both resilience at home and deterrence abroad. The US Navy is facing a looming shortfall in Tomahawk cruise missile capacity, just as planners fear a renewed large-scale war with Iran could demand heavy opening strikes. This gap arises because the Navy's Ohio-class guided missile submarines, SSGNs, are nearing retirement after more than 4 decades of service. Each Ohio-class SSGN can carry up to 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, giving the United States a massive, covert undersea strike magazine for the opening phases of a conflict. These submarines can unleash large, precision missile salvos from underwater, hitting key enemy targets early while remaining hidden from detection. The US Navy currently operates 4 such Ohio-class guided missile submarines, which together represent a major share of America's long-range conventional firepower at sea. However, all 4 SSGNs are scheduled to retire in the coming years, mainly due to aging hulls and growing maintenance burdens that make continued operation difficult. Once removed from service, their retirement would strip 616 Tomahawk missiles from the US Undersea Strike Force on paper. Combined with the planned retirement of its Ticonderoga-class cruisers, the US Navy is on track to lose launch capacity for roughly 2,080 Tomahawk cruise missiles. This combined loss would create a pronounced drop in America's long-range, sea-based conventional missile firepower until replacements fully arrive. The Ohio-class SSGNs are widely regarded as the most powerful conventional strike submarines ever fielded, given their large missile load and flexibility. They can stay hidden underwater for long periods while delivering repeated, large-scale Tomahawk salvos against land targets. In addition to strike missions, these submarines also support covert Navy SEAL and special operations, using their size and payload to carry commandos and equipment. The submarines were originally built in the 1980s as ballistic missile boats and later converted, and they are now over 40 years old. Aging nuclear reactors and rising maintenance needs are the main drivers behind the decision to remove them from service. New Virginia-class Block V attack submarines, equipped with an added missile compartment, are expected to partially take over the SSGN's role. However, each Virginia Block V can hold only about 40 Tomahawk missiles, far fewer than a single Ohio-class SSGN. In practical terms, the Navy would need roughly 3 Virginia-class boats to match the Tomahawk load of 1 Ohio-class guided missile submarine. US officials and analysts warn this mismatch could leave a notable strike capability gap that persists well into the 2030s. To soften the transition, the Navy is considering extending the service lives of at least 2 of the SSGNs, USS Ohio and USS Michigan, until sufficient replacements are available. At the same time, Navy leaders have acknowledged that the costs of sustaining high-tempo operations for a prolonged Iran war would be difficult to bear under current budgets.